Emma Martinez had been working as a maid in the Morrison mansion for 3 years, but she had never seen the daughter of the house. Everyone whispered about Sophia Morrison, the billionaire's only child who lived in the east wing of the massive estate. The other servants spoke in hushed tones about how Sophia had lost her sight in a car accident when she was 16, and how she rarely left her rooms anymore. Emma was different from the other maids. While they hurried through their duties and avoided the east wing entirely, Emma felt drawn to that part of the house. She noticed how the hallways there were always dim, how fresh flowers were never placed in the vases, and how an eerie silence hung in the air like a heavy blanket. One rainy Tuesday morning, Emma was cleaning the main hallway when she heard something unusual. It was the sound of crying, soft and heartbroken, coming from behind the heavy oak doors of the east wing. The other maids had strict instructions never to disturb Sophia, but Emma couldn't ignore the sound of someone in pain. She approached the door carefully, her heart pounding. The crying grew louder, mixed with frustrated sounds like someone struggling with something. Emma knocked gently on the door so softly she wasn't sure it could even be heard. "Go away," came a sharp voice from inside. "I don't need anything." But Emma could hear the pain behind the angry words. She had grown up in a poor family, where showing kindness was more important than following rules. "I'm sorry to bother you," Emma said through the door. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." There was silence for a moment. Then the door opened slightly, revealing a young woman about Emma's age with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to look through rather than at her. Sophia Morrison was beautiful, but her face was marked with frustration and sadness. "You're new," Sophia said, her voice still cold but with a hint of curiosity. "Not really," Emma replied gently. "I've been working here for 3 years." "I'm Emma." Sophia's expression changed slightly, showing surprise. 3 years? And you've never tried to talk to me before?" Emma noticed that Sophia was holding a book, and there were papers scattered on the floor around her feet. It looked like she had been struggling to read Braille, but the pages had fallen and she couldn't find them. "Would you like some help?" Emma asked, pointing to the papers, then realizing Sophia couldn't see her gesture. "I mean with picking up your papers?" For the first time, Sophia's guard seemed to drop just a little. "You don't have to," she said, but her voice was softer now. "Everyone else just pretends I don't exist." Emma stepped into the room without being invited and began gathering the scattered papers. The room was beautiful but felt cold and unused, like a museum display rather than a place where someone actually lived. As she handed the papers back to Sophia, their fingers touched briefly. Sophia seemed surprised by the gentle contact, as if she wasn't used to kind human touch. "Thank you," Sophia whispered. And for the first time since Emma had met her, she smiled slightly. That small moment of connection would change both of their lives forever, though neither of them knew it yet. Emma had just taken the first step toward breaking down the walls that Sophia had built around herself. And Sophia had just experienced the first genuine kindness she had felt in years. As Emma left the room, she made a decision that would go against everything she had been told about her job. She was going to find a way to help Sophia Morrison, no matter what the consequences might be. The next morning, Emma found herself thinking about Sophia while she cleaned the main areas of the mansion. She had learned from the other servants that Sophia's father, Richard Morrison, was one of the richest men in the country, but he was always traveling for business. He had hired nurses and caregivers for Sophia, but they came and went quickly because Sophia refused to cooperate with them. Emma decided to take a different approach. Instead of trying to help Sophia directly, she began making small changes around the east wing. She started placing fresh flowers in the hallways, choosing ones with strong, pleasant scents that Sophia could enjoy. She made sure the path from Sophia's room to other parts of the wing was always clear of obstacles. When Emma brought Sophia's lunch tray that day, she knocked on the door again. This time, Sophia opened it more quickly. "You're the one who's been putting flowers in the hallway," Sophia said. It wasn't a question. Emma was surprised. "How did you know it was me?" "The jasmine," Sophia replied. "It's my favorite scent, but I never told anyone that. You just somehow knew." She paused, seeming to consider something. "Would you like to come in? I mean, if you have time." Emma accepted the invitation and found herself in Sophia's sitting room. The space was elegant but felt lonely, with expensive furniture that looked like it was rarely used. Sophia moved around the room with careful practice steps, showing how well she had memorized the layout. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia said as they sat down. "Why are you being kind to me? Everyone else either treats me like I'm made of glass or like I'm invisible." Emma thought about her answer carefully. "I think everyone deserves to have someone who cares about them," she said simply. "And you seem like you have a lot to offer the world, even if you can't see it right now." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "I used to paint," she said suddenly. "Before the accident. I was going to study art in college. I had so many plans." Her voice became bitter. "Now I can't even read a book without dropping half the pages." Emma felt her heart break for this young woman who had lost so much. "Maybe you could paint differently now," she suggested carefully. "I've heard of artists who create amazing work using touch and texture instead of sight." "That's impossible," Sophia said quickly, but Emma could hear curiosity in her voice despite her words. "Would you show me some of your old paintings?" Emma asked. "I'd love to see them." Sophia hesitated, then stood up. "They're in my bedroom," she said. "My father wanted to throw them away, but I wouldn't let him." She led Emma to another room where canvases were stacked against the walls, covered with dust sheets. When Sophia pulled away the covers, Emma gasped. The paintings were incredible, full of life, color, and emotion. They showed a Sophia who had been confident and full of dreams. "These are amazing," Emma said, meaning every word. "You have real talent." Sophia touched one of the canvases gently, her fingers tracing the dried paint. "I can still feel the texture," she murmured. "Sometimes I dream that I'm painting again." As Emma looked at the paintings, an idea began to form in her mind. She didn't say anything yet, but she was starting to think of a way to help Sophia find her passion again. It would be risky, and she would have to be very careful, but she was determined to try. When Emma left Sophia's room that day, both women felt something they hadn't experienced in a long time. Sophia felt hope, just a tiny spark that maybe her life could have meaning again, and Emma felt the satisfaction of knowing she was making a real difference in someone's life. Neither of them realized that their growing friendship was about to face its first major test. Emma spent the entire weekend researching techniques for blind artists. She visited libraries and searched online, learning about texture painting, sculptural methods, and ways to create art through touch and feel. She used her own small savings to buy special paints and materials that would work for someone who couldn't see. When Monday came, Emma was nervous but excited to share her ideas with Sophia. However, when she knocked on Sophia's door that morning, there was no answer. She tried again later, but still nothing. Finally, another maid, Mrs. Henderson, approached her in the hallway. "You'd better stay away from Miss Sophia," Mrs. Henderson warned. "Mr. Morrison came home unexpectedly yesterday and found out you've been talking to his daughter. He's not happy about it." Emma's heart sank. She had been so focused on helping Sophia that she hadn't considered how her actions might be viewed by Sophia's father. But she couldn't just abandon Sophia now, especially when she was starting to make progress. That afternoon, Emma was called to the main office of the house. Richard Morrison sat behind a large desk, his face stern and intimidating. He was a tall man in an expensive suit, with cold gray eyes that seemed to look right through her. "Miss Martinez," he began, his voice sharp, "I understand you've been disturbing my daughter." "I was just trying to help," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My daughter doesn't need help from the household staff," Mr. Morrison replied coldly. "She has trained professionals for that. Your job is to clean, not to interfere with family matters." Emma felt anger rising in her chest, but she knew she had to be careful. "With respect, sir, Sophia seems very lonely." "I was just trying to be friendly." Mr. Morrison's face darkened. "My daughter's name is Miss Morrison to you. And loneliness is not your concern. Sophia has everything she needs. The best medical care, the finest food, a beautiful home. She doesn't need false hope from someone who doesn't understand her situation." "But what if she could paint again?" Emma said before she could stop herself. "What if there was a way for her to create art even without her sight?" The room went completely silent. Mr. Morrison stood up slowly, his face showing both anger and something else. Pain, perhaps, or fear. "Art," he said, his voice dangerous. "Art is what caused this whole mess. If Sophia hadn't been so obsessed with getting to that art exhibition, she never would have been in the car that night. Art ruined her life, and I won't have you filling her head with impossible dreams." Emma realized she had touched on something much deeper than she had understood. Sophia's accident was connected to her love of art, and her father blamed that passion for what had happened to her. Sometimes the things we love most are worth the risk, Emma said quietly, and maybe helping her find a new way to create could help her heal. Mr. Morrison walked around the desk until he was standing very close to Emma. "You have 24 hours to decide," he said. "Either you stay away from my daughter completely or you find another job. Those are your only choices." As Emma left the office, her mind was racing. She could keep her job and follow orders, leaving Sophia alone in her tower of sadness. Or she could risk everything to help a young woman find hope again. When she passed Sophia's door that evening, she heard something that made her decision for her. Sophia was crying again, but this time the sobs sounded different, not just sad, but desperate and hopeless. Emma knocked on the door, knowing that this choice might cost her everything. "Sophia, it's Emma," she called softly. "I'm here if you want to talk." The crying stopped. After a long moment, the door opened and Sophia's face appeared. Her eyes were red from crying, but they showed relief at hearing Emma's voice. "I thought you had decided to leave me alone too," Sophia whispered. "Never," Emma said firmly. "I made you a promise and I intend to keep it." As they sat together in Sophia's room, Emma made a decision that would change both of their futures. She was going to help Sophia paint again, no matter what the consequences might be. Emma knew she was risking her job, but she couldn't abandon Sophia now. Over the next few days, she carefully planned how to introduce the art materials she had bought. She waited until Mr. Morrison left for another business trip, then approached Sophia with her idea. "I want to try something with you," Emma said, sitting across from Sophia in her room. "But you have to trust me." Sophia tilted her head, curious. "What kind of something?" Emma pulled out a small canvas and some special textured paints she had researched. "I want you to try painting again, but in a completely different way. These paints have different textures. Some are rough, some are smooth, some are thick. You can feel the differences with your fingers." Sophia immediately shook her head. "Emma, I can't. I wouldn't know where to put anything or what colors to use. It would just be a mess." "What if mess is okay?" Emma asked gently. "What if the point isn't to create something perfect, but just to feel the joy of creating again?" Emma guided Sophia's hand to touch the different paints. She watched as Sophia's fingers explored the textures, and for the first time in weeks she saw Sophia's face show genuine interest. "This one feels like sand," Sophia murmured, touching a rough textured paint. "And this one?" "Like silk," Sophia said, a small smile appearing on her face. Emma helped Sophia dip her fingers in the paint and guided her hand to the canvas. At first, Sophia was hesitant and fearful, but as she began to feel the paint spreading under her fingers, something magical happened. Her movements became more confident, more purposeful. For an hour, Sophia painted with her hands, creating swirls and patterns that seemed to flow from some deep place inside her. She couldn't see what she was creating, but Emma could see that the act of painting was healing something in Sophia's soul. "How does it look?" Sophia asked when she finally stopped. Emma studied the canvas. It wasn't like Sophia's old realistic paintings, but it was beautiful in a completely different way. The textures created depth and movement, and the patterns seemed to express emotions that words couldn't capture. "It's beautiful," Emma said honestly. "It's different from your old work, but it's amazing. It looks like music made visible, or like emotions you can touch." Sophia's face lit up with a joy that Emma hadn't seen before. "I felt something while I was painting," she said. "For the first time since the accident, I felt like myself again." They continued these secret painting sessions for several days. Sophia's confidence grew with each canvas, and her techniques became more sophisticated. She learned to create different effects with various tools and began to develop her own unique style of textural art. But their secret couldn't last forever. One afternoon, while Sophia was working on a particularly ambitious piece, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Emma quickly began gathering the art supplies, but it was too late. The door opened, and Mr. Morrison stood there, his face showing absolute fury. Behind him stood Mrs. Henderson, looking guilty and apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison," Mrs. Henderson said. "I had to tell you. I was worried about Miss Sophia." Mr. Morrison looked at the paint-covered canvas, at Sophia's hands still colorful with paint, and at Emma holding the art supplies. His face went through several emotions: anger, pain, and something that looked almost like fear. "Sophia, go wash your hands," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Now." Sophia stood up, her face showing defiance for the first time since Emma had known her. "No, Father, I'm not finished." "Yes, you are," Mr. Morrison said. "You're finished with this nonsense, and Miss Martinez is finished working in this house." Emma felt her heart breaking, not for herself, but for Sophia, who looked like she was watching her newfound hope being torn away from her again. "Please, Mr. Morrison," Emma said. "You should see how happy this makes her. You should see how alive she becomes when she's creating." "Alive?" Mr. Morrison's voice rose. "This obsession with art nearly killed her once. I won't let it happen again." The confrontation was about to explode into something much bigger, and Emma realized that there were deeper wounds in this family than she had ever imagined. Sophia's accident wasn't just a tragedy, it was a source of guilt and fear that had been poisoning both father and daughter for years. The tension in the room was unbearable. Sophia stood with paint still on her hands, facing her father with a determination that surprised everyone, including herself. "You want to know what nearly killed me?" Sophia said, her voice stronger than Emma had ever heard it. "It wasn't art, Father. It was rushing to that exhibition because I knew you disapproved of my painting. I was driving too fast because I was angry and hurt that you never supported my dreams." Mr. Morrison's face went pale. "Sophia, you don't understand." "No, you don't understand," Sophia interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "You've spent 3 years keeping me locked away like I'm made of glass. You've made me feel like my life ended in that car crash, but for the first time since the accident, Emma has helped me feel alive again." Emma watched as years of suppressed emotions poured out of both father and daughter. She realized that Mr. Morrison's anger wasn't really about the art. It was about his own guilt and fear of losing Sophia completely. "Do you know what it's like?" Sophia continued. "To feel like you have nothing left to offer the world? Emma showed me that I can still create, still contribute something meaningful. She gave me back a piece of myself that I thought was gone forever." Mr. Morrison sat down heavily in a chair, suddenly looking much older than his years. "I almost lost you that night," he said quietly. "When the doctor said you might not survive, I made a promise that if you lived, I would protect you from everything that could hurt you." "But you can't protect me from living," Sophia said, her voice gentler now, "and you can't protect me from being who I am." Emma stood quietly in the corner, feeling like she was witnessing something private and important. She was prepared to leave if it meant Sophia could have this conversation with her father, but Sophia reached out and found Emma's hand. "Emma believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself," Sophia said. "She didn't see a broken person who needed to be hidden away. She saw someone with potential who just needed a different path." Mr. Morrison looked at Emma for the first time, as more than just a servant who had disobeyed his orders. "What exactly have you been doing with my daughter?" he asked, but his voice was more curious than angry now. Emma took a deep breath. "I've been helping Sophia explore textural painting," she explained. "She creates beautiful art using touch and feel instead of sight. She's developed her own unique style that's completely different from her old work, but just as meaningful." "Show him," Sophia said suddenly. "Show him what I've created." Emma hesitated, but Sophia nodded encouragingly. Emma brought out several of Sophia's recent paintings, laying them carefully where Mr. Morrison could see them. The change in his expression was immediate and dramatic. He stared at the canvases for a long time, reaching out to touch the textured surfaces. The paintings were abstract but emotional, full of movement and feeling that seemed to leap off the canvas. "You made these?" he asked Sophia, his voice filled with wonder. "Emma taught me how," Sophia said. "She researched techniques for artists who can't see. She spent her own money on special materials. She believed I could do this when I didn't believe it myself." Mr. Morrison continued studying the paintings, and Emma could see him beginning to understand. These weren't attempts to recreate Sophia's old art. They were something entirely new and powerful. "They're extraordinary," he said finally. "They're completely different from your old work, but they're incredible." For the first time since Emma had known either of them, father and daughter embraced. Years of fear, guilt, and misunderstanding began to dissolve in that moment. "I'm sorry," Mr. Morrison whispered to his daughter. "I was so afraid of losing you that I forgot you needed to live." Sophia hugged him back, crying but smiling at the same time. "I need to create, Father. It's part of who I am. Emma helped me find a way to do that safely." Mr. Morrison looked at Emma over Sophia's shoulder. His expression was complex, gratitude, embarrassment, and respect all mixed together. "Miss Martinez," he said formally, "I believe I owe you an apology. And perhaps we need to discuss a new arrangement." Emma felt hope rising in her chest, but she wasn't sure what he meant. The next few minutes would determine not just her job, but the entire future of Sophia's artistic journey. Mr. Morrison stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sprawling grounds of his estate. When he turned back to face Emma and Sophia, his expression had completely changed from the angry man who had confronted them just minutes before. "Emma," he said, using her first name for the first time, "I've spent 3 years hiring the most expensive specialists, therapists and caregivers money could buy. None of them accomplished in 3 years what you've done in 3 weeks. Emma felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "I just saw someone who needed a friend," she said simply. "It was more than that," Mr. Morrison replied. "You saw potential where everyone else, including me, saw only limitations." He paused, seeming to make a decision. "I have a proposition for you." Sophia reached for Emma's hand, squeezing it encouragingly. "I want to offer you a different position," Mr. Morrison continued. "Not as a maid, but as Sophia's companion and art instructor. I'll provide you with a proper salary, your own living quarters in the main house, and a budget for whatever art supplies and equipment Sophia needs." Emma's eyes widened in shock. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. "Mr. Morrison, I don't have any formal training in art therapy or teaching, but you have something more valuable," he said. "You have intuition, compassion, and the ability to see what Sophia needs. Would you be willing to learn? I can arrange for you to study with professionals, take courses, whatever you need to become the best possible guide for Sophia's artistic development." Sophia was practically bouncing with excitement. "Emma, say yes. Please say yes." Emma looked between father and daughter, seeing hope and possibility in both their faces. But she also felt the weight of responsibility. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't help Sophia reach her full potential?" "You've already proven that you can," Mr. Morrison said firmly. "And besides, Sophia will have other instructors and experts to work with too. But she needs you as her primary support person, someone who believes in her unconditionally." Emma thought about her small apartment, her meager savings, and her simple life as a maid. This opportunity would change everything for her. But more importantly, it would change everything for Sophia. "There's one condition," Emma said, surprising both of them with her boldness. "Sophia gets to make her own decisions about her art. No more hiding, no more protecting her from the world. If she wants to show her work publicly someday, you have to support that." Mr. Morrison looked at Sophia, who was nodding eagerly. "You really think she's ready for that kind of exposure?" "I think she deserves the chance to try," Emma said. "She's stronger than you think," Sophia spoke up for herself. "I want people to see that losing your sight doesn't mean losing your ability to create something beautiful. Maybe my story could help other people who think their lives are over because of a disability." Mr. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with his protective instincts. Finally, he nodded. "All right. But we do it gradually, carefully, and if at any point it becomes too much pressure or causes Sophia distress, we step back." "Agreed," Sophia said quickly. Emma felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes. "Then yes," she said, "I accept your offer." The three of them spent the rest of the afternoon making plans. Mr. Morrison arranged for contractors to convert a sunroom into a proper art studio for Sophia, with special lighting and ventilation. He ordered catalogs of specialized art supplies and equipment. Most importantly, he scheduled appointments with art therapy experts who could teach Emma advanced techniques. As the sun began to set, Sophia was working on a new painting, while Emma and Mr. Morrison watched. The transformation in Sophia was remarkable. She moved with confidence and purpose, completely absorbed in her creative process. "I haven't seen her this happy since before the accident," Mr. Morrison said quietly to Emma. "Thank you for giving me back my daughter." Emma watched Sophia work, remembering the broken, hopeless young woman she had first met just a few weeks ago. She was always there, Emma replied. She just needed someone to help her find her way back to herself. But even as they celebrated this new beginning, none of them realized that Sophia's story was about to reach far beyond the walls of the Morrison mansion. The world was about to discover the extraordinary art of the blind billionaire's daughter, and her journey would inspire millions of people who had lost hope in their own dreams. 6 months later, Sophia's art studio had become the heart of the Morrison mansion. What had once been a quiet, somber house was now filled with the sounds of creativity and laughter. Sophia had completed over 30 paintings, each one more sophisticated than the last, and her unique textural style had evolved into something truly extraordinary. Emma had thrown herself into learning everything she could about art therapy and adaptive techniques for disabled artists. She attended workshops, studied with experts, and even connected with other blind artists around the world, who shared their knowledge and experience with Sophia. The breakthrough came when Dr. Sarah Chen, a renowned art therapist, visited the mansion to see Sophia's work. She stood in the studio for nearly an hour, examining each painting with growing amazement. "These are museum quality," Dr. Chen said finally. "Sophia, you've developed a completely original artistic language. I've never seen textural work this sophisticated and emotionally powerful." Sophia beamed with pride, but Emma could see she was also nervous. "Do you really think other people would want to see them?" "I think other people need to see them," Dr. Chen replied. "Your work could change how the world thinks about disability and creativity." Dr. Chen had connections with several prestigious galleries, and she offered to arrange a small private showing for art critics and collectors. Mr. Morrison was hesitant at first, but Sophia was determined to try. The private showing was held at a small but respected gallery in the city. Only 20 people were invited, but they included some of the most influential figures in the art world. Emma stood nervously beside Sophia as the guests examined the paintings. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Critics who had seen thousands of artworks stood transfixed by Sophia's pieces. Gallery owners whispered excitedly to each other. Most importantly, people seemed genuinely moved by the emotional power of Sophia's art. "How does she create such precise textures without being able to see them?" asked one famous critic. Sophia, who had been quiet most of the evening, stepped forward. "I see with my hands and my heart," she said simply. "Every texture tells a story. Every pattern carries an emotion. When you can't see with your eyes, you learn to see with your whole being." The evening was such a success that 3 different galleries offered Sophia solo exhibitions. The story of the billionaire's blind daughter who had rediscovered her artistic voice began to spread through the art world and beyond. But the real moment that changed everything came 2 weeks later. A journalist had written an article about Sophia's story, and it was picked up by national news outlets. Suddenly, Sophia was receiving letters from people all over the world. There was a veteran who had lost his sight in combat and thought his life as a photographer was over. There was a young girl with cerebral palsy who wanted to paint but thought she couldn't because her hands shook. There was an elderly man who had given up his woodworking hobby after developing arthritis. All of them had been inspired by Sophia's story to believe that they could still create, still contribute, still find joy in their lives despite their challenges. "Emma, listen to this," Sophia said one morning, holding a letter that Emma had just read to her. "This woman says that seeing my paintings online gave her the courage to try sculpture again, after losing her sight to diabetes. She says I helped her realize that art isn't about perfection, it's about expression." Emma felt tears in her eyes as she watched Sophia process the impact her story was having on others. The young woman who had once felt like her life was over was now giving hope to thousands of people around the world. The Morrison mansion had been transformed too. The East Wing was no longer a place of isolation, but a creative center where Sophia worked, taught workshops for other disabled artists, and welcomed visitors who wanted to learn adaptive art techniques. Mr. Morrison had become one of Sophia's biggest supporters, using his business connections to fund programs for disabled artists and advocate for accessibility in museums and galleries. As for Emma, she had found her calling in a way she never could have imagined. She had enrolled in a degree program in art therapy and was working toward becoming a certified instructor. But more than that, she had discovered the incredible power of believing in someone when they can't believe in themselves. One evening, As they sat in Sophia's studio watching the sunset through the large windows, Sophia turned to Emma with a smile. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Sophia asked. "You said that everyone deserves to have someone who cares about them." Emma nodded, remembering that moment that felt like a lifetime ago. "You were wrong about one thing, though," Sophia continued. "You said I seemed like I had a lot to offer the world. But the truth is I had no idea what I could offer until you helped me find it." Emma squeezed Sophia's hand. "We found it together," she said. And look what happened. They looked around the studio, filled with Sophia's beautiful paintings and letters from people whose lives had been touched by her story. What had begun as a simple act of kindness from a maid to a lonely young woman had grown into something that was changing lives around the world. Sophia's next exhibition was scheduled to open in 3 months, at one of the most prestigious galleries in New York. The title of the show was Seeing Beyond Sight, the art of Sophia Morrison. But Emma knew that the real story wasn't just about art. It was about the power of human connection, the importance of believing in each other, and the incredible things that can happen when we choose compassion over indifference. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes, and sometimes touching one person's life can end up touching the whole world.